Hey everybody, it's Torrie, the founder of the Mighty Dames, and we are bringing in a new segment, and we're going to call this, I think I went with Dames Discuss, title pending. I'm wishy-washy. The whole idea of this is to get dames together to discuss topics that we are seeing that are not what's the word I'm thinking of? Unique to heavyweight women, but something that we see that is I'm seeing a trend of it a lot within heavyweight women and within women in jiu-jitsu in general. So I have two wonderful women who are going to be joining me today. Ladies, please introduce yourselves.
Okay. I am Maggie Torres. I am a black belt. I had to actually say that because I've been saying brown belt for the last couple of weeks. I am a new black belt at Torres Jiu-Jitsu in Spring, Texas. I am a gym owner, and I have recently resigned from my job as a full-time English teacher. So I'm now a full-time gym owner and training.
That's awesome. Next.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Alia Garcia-Valadez. I am a brown belt at Brazilian Top Team School of Lake Jackson, School of Jiu-Jitsu in Lake Jackson, Texas. And I work for a local subdivision of the state that manages and funding for the area of Houston and Galveston. And I'm a trainer for them.
Well, I didn't do my own. Well, I'm Torrie O'Neil. I'm a purple belt. And I'm the owner of the Mighty Dames. And then I also am a domestic violence case manager. So today we are talking about, I think when I messaged all of you what we were talking about, every single one of you were like, oof. We're talking about imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome is simply put is this feeling of self-doubt that that our skills, our accomplishments are somehow unearned. I think we can say in general society, women have some degree of imposter syndrome. We feel like we haven't earned where we're at. But I've been seeing recently a lot of it showing up within the jiu-jitsu community, more so than I have before, which surprised me considering we have more participation of women than we've had before. So let's start with Maggie. What is your experience with imposter syndrome? Just Cliff Notes version.
We don't have all day. Yeah, I don't even know where to start with that.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me start here. You are a new black belt. Mm-hmm. How are you settling into that reality?
You know what? I'm not gonna lie. It was kind of surreal at first. Like, first of all, getting your black belt on the podium after you won a tournament that you were never expected to win is like mind blowing. I think I had a couple weeks where I was like, oh, I'm a black belt now. Like I had to actually hide my brown belt. I can see it now. I had to hide it because I kept leaving the house and trying to grab my brown belt every time I left. Surreal. And I think it didn't become super surreal until I went to my first training session at our main academy team took, and I got in line with everybody, and then the black belts were like, oh, no, you line up here. So not only am I a black belt, I'm the only female black belt now. And so I was the only woman up there, and that was already kind of like surreal. And then I'm like, oh, maybe people there are looking at me thinking I don't deserve to be here, which I'm sure nobody's actually thinking, or they're probably like, she doesn't do nogi. Who is this person? Because I was in a nogi class, but yeah, I think it was just like, for me, it was the lining up. And then I kind of was at a point where I was like, oh, well, now I line up with the black belts, and I'm used to being the person who lines up on the wall and gets to and yes, I was at the end of the line and I get to choose people, but now I'm on the other side and now I get to choose people. And now I'm like, do I get to drill anymore? Like, am I still allowed to drill in class, or do I have to go around and help people? Because now people assume that I know what I'm doing and everything. I still have ADHD. Like Professor Mike, Professor Steve, they'll show the move 12 times and I'll just, because I know people are looking at me, and then they'll be like, okay, on 2, 1, 2, and we clap. And I'm like, oh shit, what were we doing? And so then I have to go around and people are like, am I doing it right? I'm like, yes.
Yes. That looks good. I see you doing it.
Show me what you understood from what he said.
Yes, and black belts, I've started to realize a lot of black belt is just asking people questions either.
Show me where you thought you went wrong.
Where they realized what they did wrong. So now I'm starting to do that thing that like Travis them did to me. Well, where do you think you went wrong? But on a serious note, I think I'm settling into it pretty nicely now. Like, I do feel like I deserve to be there. There's just always a little bit of doubt.
Okay. Let's see, Alia, with you. Let's see. You recently, both. Let me just say, whatever y'all think, both of y'all are recently got some shiny hardware that you should definitely be proud of. So let's switch into the competition aspect. You recently just went to Nogi Pans. How are you settling into the reality, knowing how like heavyweight brackets and the higher you get up, the competition is sparse. So how do you? I'm gonna open this to both of you, but how do you do the process of evaluating your wins in competitions?
Yeah, it's a little.
Time out.
Well,
you just had a complete tonal shift when you said, yeah.
I was like, man, that went a little deeper than I was expecting the same way. No, so I mean, reality is for me, I've felt it. I felt imposter syndrome at every single, at white, at blue, at purple, hella at purple, and then at brown. And for Pans Nogi, this one in particular, because one, I was done for the year. I wasn't expecting to go compete anymore this year or even most of next year because of, my injury. So, and then on top of that, I had already missed out on Worlds, and that's usually the one I save for, like the whole, like everything. And again, another year where I'm not able to train the way I was able to train. So even with the brown belt promotion, I still felt like, man, this is going to be a test of how I hang with these brown belt ladies at super heavy. And then, like you said, it's sparse. Competition is sparse. The older you get, the higher the weight class and the higher the belt.
Yeah.
And then I'm also learning too that there is I don't want to say there's a trend, but there's a game. There's definitely a game. I guess I've always kind of missed out on that part of competition. There's a game that people play where they'll go into one division and then wait till the last minute and possibly move somewhere else. So you go in thinking, woohoo, I've got at least one match. And then now all my eggs are in the basket for open class, and I'm having to reach out at the last minute to the open class ladies that I know will stay, or the other ladies that, actually, and what's funny is that Nogi Pans, every single woman in Master 3 Brown Belt came from, in our own weight class, a solo division. And sucked. That sucked. Yeah. So, there's that whole feeling of, for me, because it was my first run at Brown, my debut, if you will. There's that feeling of, did I really just earn this gold? And it takes, I think now at this level, I have learned, you know what? Yeah, I showed the fuck up. I earned it. I earned it. I showed up. And that took years of coaches and friends that coach telling me, Maggie at one point or another telling me too, saying, hey, you absolutely earned it. You trained whatever time you spent training, you trained, and giving everything that has happened, the fact that you showed up and still showed up to compete and ready to go. So yeah, it was for me personally, it was that debut at Brown I really did in the first little, like, earn this gold? No, not really. And then I was like, you know what? No, damn well, yes, I did. I showed up. I was here. But if you show up, they will come, kind of thing. So yeah,
I got another question. So each one of us is been promoted, and we all have that picture of us being promoted where we're like, you have the where my belt at? Wrong side. You have your belt. You're like, when was it when you first did your competition? Because when we get our belt, I feel like we are like, yes, I did this. awesome. For me, on my drive, because I got podium promoted too for purple. On my drive home, I was like, oh shit. This means I gotta know more stuff. People gonna ask me questions. Did you have that moment of like realization after your recent promotion of like, oh my God, what am I gonna do?
I don't know. Is this for me or for
both of you? Both of you.
You know what? This was the first one that I didn't have that for. And I think it's just because I had that at every single bout. Like there was so much pressure because I was like, oh God, I just got purple belt. Purple belt was the hardest. I got purple belt and then I won
the trenches at purple belt.
Yeah, I won hands like right away. And then everybody expected me to win everything from here on out. And I was like, oh, okay. It was almost a worse one because I'm like, man, now there's nowhere to go but down. I can't go up. And then I got to brown. I was like, oh shit, I'm a brown belt now. But black belt, when they put that around my waist, I was like there's still imposter syndrome. But the first thing I thought was, oh man, I've arrived. That's
awesome.
In the way that it happened too. Like going back to open class, I was that person who always refused to do open class. I had done it at blue belt. I think I did it once at purple. I refused to do it because I always felt like I would tell people, oh, it's because it's so late in the day. And that's kind of true because I want to eat. But also I was like, if I win, people are going to go, oh, you won because you're an ultra heavy. And then if you lose, oh, you lost, you're an ultra heavy. And I've never cared too much about like losing. They're like, oh, you beat the ultra heavy. People make it a big deal. But I thought about it and I was kind of like, wait a minute. I guess I had the opposite experience because nobody in my division came from a solo division. They all had a bunch of tough matches back to back. Yeah. I thought about it. And I honestly, the reason I did it is because I lost my weight class and I was like, God, I shouldn't have lost that. And I was heartbroken. I was like, I'm going to get out there and do it. And then I ended up winning it. And I had a thought and I was like, you know what? Not at one point in that whole like match was I like, oh, well, I won this because I'm heavy. And actually it kind of got me thinking like with the absolute people are like, well, of course the ultra heavy is going to win. Well, people are assuming that's because of weight. I want people to start thinking about who is in the ultra heavy divisions, even at adult. They're the most technical people. You're going to tell me Gabriela Pisani is just winning because she's big? Because that's not the case. That's the most technical person out there. What love him or hate him, Miragali, that's a real technical man. You're going to tell me he's not Eric Muniz. That's a technical so people who are in these like big divisions, it's not that they're not technical. We've got this mindset around it. Like, even if you hear commentary, people will say on the commentary, oh man, what a technical guard for an ultra heavy. Shut up. Y'all didn't know who Orlando Sanchez was? Like, you didn't know who, like ultra heavies. Of course we have technical guards. We have to. We're used to rolling with little people that we might have to take a little bit of weight off of. So where am I going to put you? My guard. My guard's going to get more technical than your guard because you're not playing guard on me. You know? Sorry, this turned into a rant, but like,
it's like yes.
Division, weight can make a difference, but you're going to tell me that like my weight made a difference when I had you in my guard? Like that's part of imposter syndrome, is accepting these like beliefs that other people have created. Other people have ideas that ultra heavies can't do certain things. So we start to think that we can't. That's not the case. Yep. And it's once I think everybody starts to believe that, they're going to realize like the playing field's a lot more even than you think it is. Like for sure, I can get in there and I can just like smash people and stuff. But guess what? They signed up the same way I did. They signed up.
That's right. And that right there is what I tell everyone who's larger. Is like, oh, I don't know this. Just like you put your name down and paid your money, they did the same thing. Everyone has the same. You didn't sneak into the competition.
And the difference is I'm not going to make that post going, well, lost to this person who gave up 4 weight classes because they were faster than me. Like, how does that look? They're like, well, I moved up in weight, lost to the ultra heavy. I mean, man, you also just lost to the person who maybe was more technical than you. Let's have
better. I'm better that day. They were better that day.
No, not ready for that. We're not ready for that conversation. Like,
I feel
we had to become more well-rounded because of the weight that we are. We had to. Don't take that away from us. I mean, you can try to, but I know where I am and I know where my technique came from. So
look, I'm trying to be Maggie when I grow up and have this confidence.
We all are.
But you know what? That's very real. That like and we can flow this, Alia, when it's your turn, into this whole idea that it's somehow it's skill versus size. That if I win, it's either my size won or I was. It's honestly, people don't give you the option to say that your skill is what was superior. Okay. It's always well, you were bigger than that person. And look, look, I'm 6'1". I'm like sitting right under, like right, I'm hovering around 300. I'm a big body Benz. Like I know what I have. And I would be naive to pretend that like some of the success, I would even say a lot of the things that are beneficial to me are not due to my size, but also I'm slow as shit. I'm clumsy. I get armbarred every single day. I have the most narrow feet for the thighs that I have. So I'm tripped. So like I have advantages, but I have a lot of like things that do not work into my advantage at all.
We all do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is absolute. It's funny. It's kind of funny, Maggie, that you brought up that about the, just because I won you because of the whatever. So purple, I definitely agree. Purple was probably in the trenches, the toughest one, and the one that I felt the most initially imposter syndrome. I really did. It was unexpected when I got it. Brown, I feel like there's imposter syndrome, but it was more from a competition standpoint. Like, can I really hang with these ladies at Brown Belt? Like, that was that. It wasn't that I didn't feel, it was a surprise too, but it wasn't like, man, I know nothing. I know nothing. There was that moment of, oh, okay, I'm like, this is real now. But at purple, and it was more that last year at purple because, and it's all good now, but there was that moment of after the tournament, after Masters, there was a post essentially implying that I was a house, I was a monster, and that was the reason why, I won essentially. And it was like, what? Hold on. So there was that moment. Even that right there was that moment of, I was like, well, you can call me a house, but I think you're wonderful. I think you're a warrior. And, ultimately an apology was given. And there was, that like, hey, I spoke out of context kind of thing. But it was that kind of stuff also adds to that imposter syndrome. Even though I had already won the year before too, there's still that moment of, it comes down to a ref decision, and it was oh man, so am I really do I really deserve my purple? If and you start to believe it. You start to believe it a little bit, especially in that raw moment. So to me, purple was probably the hardest one. That was the hardest one, but I feel like it's the brown one. I was like, okay, yeah, no, I've worked damn hard to get to this point. Like,
and then at the point where you're there for brown, like you put in your years. You could I'm not saying anyone can luck into a blue belt or a purple belt, but at a certain point, like, okay, I'm here. But like by the time you start to get to brown and black, like, girl, they're not just throwing people brown belts and black belts. So
right.
My professor used to say, but by the time I give you a brown belt, you're a black belt. And I don't disagree with that. Maybe not every school feels that way, but yeah, I don't disagree with it. I think I just got to black belt and I was like, oh, okay, I'm a brown belt with a little more seasoning. That's it.
A little more.
Well, that's similar to what, you know what? And on that note, I've never won a ref's decision. It works in the opposite to me. Especially if there is a size discrepancy. It's like, you couldn't do anything to this. You couldn't even snap her down.
Yeah, I really for that. I was as totally surprised as everybody was.
At that point, like, it comes down to what the refs value more. Like, do they value you attempting to pass? Do they value somebody spamming submissions? Like, I won my first refs decision at Master Worlds, and it was just trying to pass. Do you guys know Ginger Ninja?
Yep.
Yeah.
She's amazing. Like, that match probably could have gone either way. That was the finals match. She's got a really tricky guard. Like, if you look at that match,
long.
Not a very exciting match, but her legs, I couldn't get around them. And she has just such technical grips. I'm sitting here trying to move the entire time. I couldn't do anything. I'm just trying to pass. If you look at that match, you would be like, man, they're not exhausting much energy at all. It was just like a stalemate. It was so hard to pass. It was so hard. So I think it just depends on what the ref values more. And honestly, that could go either way because
it really can.
Feeling that day. Yeah.
Are they a guard player? Are they a passer?
Yeah. And when you're not familiar with that, when you've never experienced that in competition, I think that's where those you watch flow grappling and or whatever, you watch the videos and you see that, like, so I'm just as surprised as you that this happened.
Honestly.
I get it. Yeah.
Maggie, you mentioned something where you're talking about how your coach said by the time I give you your brown belt, you're a black belt. I think that, like, depending on your school, you can also feel a different level of imposter syndrome. Like I said, I've recently switched from like a more traditional gi school to an American jiu-jitsu school where they are the amount of wrestling that I have had to do to just survive.
Good. I think everybody has to.
It is. Yeah. So one of the things that I had, I've even struggled with within there, and I'm not as, this has probably been my most active competition year in a really long time. I have like a weird dissonance with my imposter syndrome because I have, on one hand, I'm a purple belt. I got podium promoted 6 months before the pandemic.
That's right.
So we had the pandemic, then this stupid crash that I feel like I'll never stop talking about. Then I had the crash. So I was a purple belt for 3 years before I really started training. So it wasn't until about this time last year that I actually was comfortable, like physically and mentally training. So now I'm a 4-year purple belt, and I'm like, well, I'm like, I should focus on getting promoted, right? Like I should be promoted, and I have to check my own ego and like not do the whole, oh, she's promoted now and I'm still, oh, she's the black belt and I'm still just chilling in Purple Island. So I had that of like, and it's also like, well, have I even developed my skills since blue belt? Because is this just a holdover from like, am I just working off my reserves? And then I have on the other side, it's like, now I'm at a gym where like these blue belt and white belts are kicking my ass. And they're like, these are like some grown men. These are like some some, I come from a gym where a lot of them are like, they have desk jobs. They're great and they're technical, but they got shit they have to do. They care about their health is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
I have a bunch of,
they are coming at you with all reckless abandon.
I got a bunch of 30 and unders who don't give a fuck. Besides, what's this? What are we gonna do with the next new breed? Like, bro, yeah. I'm not even here. So there's a level of like, I know we were talking about before we started recording, but like, am I an athlete or someone who does some athletic shit from time to time? Bring it.
You are an athlete. You are an athlete.
I know.
Isn't there a quote or something about runners where people are like, well, I'm not really a runner.
You're a runner.
You run. It doesn't matter if it took you 30 minutes in your 5K.
And that's a level of my imposter syndrome, is that like, am I truly an athlete? Like, I struggle with this again my entire life, is, am I an athlete or am I just like, I'm able to do athletic things at moments? Because a lot of times, like, I have no shame in admitting, like, if I can stall out, if I can rest, if I can lay my ass down, I'm going to do that too. And then I'll do something super athletic. So I struggle with the idea that I am still an athletic person when I see people who are like jacked hyper athletes who, like, when you go to a class and you see people running certain drills that you're like, and your brain is like, I could never.
That's apples and oranges, right? Because I look at it and I'm like, there are kids playing basketball in the park right now. Is that kid on the same level as Michael Jordan? No, probably not. But are they still an athlete because they're playing? I was thinking about that. You guys know who Cody Steele is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I was watching his highlight reel from the ADCC, I think it's the East Coast Trials. Amazing, phenomenal athleticism.
Let me go Google this person.
Pull that up and watch that. Honestly, go to Flow Grappling's page. It's probably at the top of it, or go to his page. It's on top of everything. I look at it, I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm not doing stuff like that. Hell no, I'm not gonna be doing stuff like that. But does that change the fact that I show my ass up? That I train every day? That I have a regimen?
Oh, Jesus, his muscles have muscles.
Right? Like, and honestly, to be fair, like, that's amazing to me, because I think when you're young, I think so many of us found jujitsu later on, and that's great. When you're young, that's the time to do that. That's the time to feel invincible. That's 1,000% the time to be like that. But you know what, too? Like, not everybody has that mindset about it. That's why he's an amazing competitor. I'm not going to be on every single highlight reel, but what I am going to be is disciplined. What I am going to be is more than motivated. What I am going to do is show my ass up every single time. What I am going to do is show up game. What I am going to do is not quit. So all of those things still make you an athlete. I was doing a private lesson actually with one of our white belts, and I referred to her. I was talking about her. I said, well, you're an athlete. And she started crying. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. What's going on? And she's like,
sorry.
Oh. She said, nobody's ever called me an athlete before. And I'm like, you're doing a sport. You're like training. You're training for this. You're an athlete. Like, I think when you said that at the beginning, I went on Google. Let me see if I got it up. The definition
She Googled me.
Of an athlete is a person who is proficient in sports and other forms of physical exercise. I would say you are more than proficient. It's also a person who is trained or skilled in any game that requires physical strength, agility, or stamina. And I believe jujitsu requires all of those things. Being athletic is different. There are people who are athletes that are not athletic. Let's be real about that. That's why jujitsu's chess, right? Like, I'm sure the average person could look at Mikey Musumeci and go, that dude is not athletic, but we know better. We know better. So like, so many different ways to be an athlete. That was my only point.
For sure. And that is definitely I think a lot of it has to do with, and I hear you, Torrie, because I know we talked many times, but I hear you where, I'm getting my ass kicked. I challenge you to switch that to, they're making me better.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what. So I was not that person that would be like, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna go see someone who specializes in sports therapy. I was just like, that's for bougie people. But I needed to, and I explored it, and insurance covered it. So why the hell not? And I thought and in Houston there are plenty, and they work with athletes. And that was one of the first things that I said, well, I'm not really an athlete. I even said it to my orthopedic surgeon, like, I'm not really an athlete, but I do jiu-jitsu and I compete. And he was like, pause, because he's young. And he was like, pause. He goes, you are an athlete. You may not be athletic, but you are an athlete. And from a sports therapy standpoint, what the first thing they teach you is the negative self-talk. That's why I went from ignoring and not talking to anybody in the bullpen to, I play music and I dance, where I'm sitting in a chair in the bullpen because my body can't hold up right now. Like that, it's either one or the other, a little bit of both. Like, and that, man, I show up every day and they're kicking my ass. These kids are kicking my ass. They're handing it to me, or I show up and I can't really move because my body is not working. It's working against me right now. But what they proposed was, I challenge you to say, they're making me better. I'm making them better by sharing my knowledge at blue, at purple, at brown, by sharing my knowledge and the experience that I've had from a female standpoint, from a competitor standpoint, from a super heavy standpoint, from someone who got into this, not even to really, do much of anything other than, I just want to lose weight and be violent, or, have an outlet for violence. Like,
next Mighty Dave shirt. I just want to lose weight.
I just want to lose weight and be violent. Girl, send me your address. I'm gonna make it up for you. I got you already.
So that, you know what I mean? But that's the mindset. I feel like that helped the imposter syndrome. I will say that's talking to someone who understands that, and you can talk to your peers and your friends and black belts and stuff like that, but talking to someone who's just throwing it back at me and saying, change your mindset, change your how you word, how you talk to yourself, change how you talk to yourself, and go in with, if you tell me all day long that it's not about the medals, it's not about this, but you're still signing up for competitions, there's something. I'm like, I'm doing it to prove to myself that I can do it. But ultimately, I'm doing it to prove to my children of what they're capable of. You know what I mean? Like, and by proxy, other people. And that is the mindset change of, okay, they're not beating me up. I'm not losing every day. I'm actually having a blast.
Yep.
And I love it because I'm able to do it, because I can still do it. Because there is going to come a time where I'm not going to be able to.
Yeah.
And that right there was the big difference. I hear it, and I challenge you to say instead of
Look,
it's okay
girl,
to be like, oh, y'all kick my ass. But you know what? Y'all are making me better. You're making me
we are
better.
team.
I want all the smoke. I want all the smoke. That's what
we
I
are firmly team therapy over here. So I hear you. I am working with my therapist on these things right now. One of the things I remember, like, so at my job, I do groups with women, and sometimes I do them with children. And I was doing, and this is another time where, again, imposter syndrome that I feel within my job is like, I'm expected to lead these women or help these women with serious issues that I've only had like a association through friends. But like one of the things we were just doing like an affirmation sheet and listening to what the women were talking about and saying to themselves. And I was like, what are y'all doing? I was like, well, think about kids, because I when I was in undergrad, I worked at a daycare. Worst job ever. Tip your daycare workers on Christmas. Tip them at Christmas.
And give them alcohol.
Oh my God. Give them an ABC liquor card. Like, they deserve it. If they don't quit after 6 months, they deserve it.
Yeah, for real.
Worst 8 months of my life. But I digress. But one of the things I realized, and I brought this to the women, is when you see kids, you cannot tell a kid they're not the best at fucking everything.
That's right.
They have the fastest shoes, which makes them the fastest runners. They jump higher than anyone. They are the best players of the imaginary game they just made up. They are the smartest. They are whatever the S is, it is them. Yeah. And it is only when we get more exposed in society, we start putting these doubts on ourselves. And like, it hits us down to the point where like, I think both of you two are awesome. So hearing you say that you have imposter syndrome, like, what are y'all talking about? I don't think I'm an athlete. So y'all telling me that I'm an athlete, I'm like, well, what are you talking about? We are our worst critics. And it's this combination of like, we've paid too much attention to society. And now we're at the point where we don't pay attention to the people who are giving us the validation, because we can't accept, it's hard to accept positive things about
compliments.
Yeah. Oh, I'm the worst at compliments.
Life spends a lot of time as a kid, life spends a lot of time knocking you down, right? So you're told like when you're a kid, like, hey, you need to be quiet, you need to sit down, and you need to do this. We kind of fall in line into expectations. If you're not a business owner, you're probably working for somebody else. So then all of a sudden you come into jujitsu and it's like, oh, this is something I get to do entirely for me. And I think that feels very weird and foreign to us, but we keep going up, right? Because I'm like, I'm doing this because I want to get better. I'm doing this. And then at a certain point, like, because there's so many varying levels in jiu-jitsu, right? You see this, like, I'm a black belt and there's this purple belt that's training 10 times a day and they're doing whatever and blah, blah, blah. But the reality of it is both of us are giving 100% of ourselves to what we're doing, but that 100% looks different. And if you have trouble accepting that, you're going to keep that imposter syndrome forever. Yep. Like, that 100% looks different. But if you're giving that 100%, that's all that you can do. And that's all that you can really ask of yourself.
Yeah, right. I think it's that comparison thing that is a big issue, a big thing, and like you're literally in a competitive sport. Like you're literally actively comparing yourself to another person every time you roll. You're like, oh, I did not do good in this roll. They did better than me. So trying to like, and that's one of the reasons I want to talk about this is because here at the Dames, we're really big about talking about self-confidence and self-esteem. And I think a lot of times through like youth, we were taught like, oh, you need to have positive self-esteem. You have positive self-esteem. But no one really told us what that is other than you're supposed to
show me what that looks like.
What that looks
exactly.
Like.
So I've had
15 and 16-year-old me. That's me. Like, show me what that looks like.
Yeah.
And for me now, especially with daughters, and kids, like, show me what that looks like. I can sit here and tell you all day, but if you don't show me what that looks like and demonstrate it, how am I supposed to feel that way? Like, how am I supposed to do it?
And then also realizing that, like, I think the moment, like, with all my self-doubt, the moment that really clicks for me was probably during the pandemic, when I saw people who were still finding a way to train, who were still like, people were still going to competitions at a certain point. As soon as competitions opened, people flooded them. But during that time is we saw a lot of growth with the Dames. We saw a lot more people connecting. And I came to the point, I was like, okay, what is my purpose in jiu-jitsu? Like, what am I doing here? Like, I don't want to, being a world champion is not like, I don't want to be a hyper competitor. That's not realistic to jujitsu. Isn't my full life. I have a whole other aspect that has absolutely nothing to do jujitsu about, that I'm just as passionate about as jujitsu. So like, I don't want to be a hyper competitor. I fucking hate traveling. I don't want to go all these places. So that's not what I'm trying to do. I have enough friends who are gym owners to know I don't want to own a gym. I definitely don't want to do that.
Shit is wrong.
Run now.
I don't want to be a gym owner. If I'm being completely honest, I didn't think the games would last this long. I keep saying I've tried to quit this shit multiple times. You will not let me.
They keep pulling me back in.
But the funny part about it is now is like, because I let people know like, hey, I'm taking mental health break. I'll be back in a month. Now I have people who are like, I figured you're on a mental health break. Just letting you know, I hope everything is going good. I'm looking forward to the future stuff.
See, but you like that's like learning how to manage that imposter syndrome. I'm gonna say on the flip side of that though, is that if you are confident as a woman in this sport, now you're cocky, and now that's a problem.
Exactly.
And now I need to make a point to bash you down a little bit.
Exactly.
That's absolutely
to find a way to knock you down a peg. Like regardless,
that flip side of all of it is. Yep. I want you to be, like pump you up and get you going, whatever. And then, but if you're a little too like, no,
if you're feeling yourself a little too much, you're like, well, rein it in. Rain. Well, you're good for. It's like you're good for a woman.
Yes,
you're doing good. You're doing great in the women's division.
You're good considering you're super heavy.
Yeah, I tell people oh my God. Sorry, another thing I could rant about for days. We're not going to. Lord. There are so many people out there. I just want to remind anybody who's listening to this who has this imposter syndrome, keep this in mind. There are so many people out there who are not good at what they do and not as qualified as you, and they are making money doing it. Yep. I don't want to give this person too much attention, but we had a con artist who was part of our gym for quite a while, right? This man somehow has found a way to still be a part of the jiu-jitsu community. So I tell everybody, live your life with the confidence of a con artist man, because that man will walk into any room and be like, I'm a black belt.
I'm the best.
Now he's a first degree black belt because he convinced somebody that he'd been training long enough to get it. Like, I need you all to have the confidence of a unqualified man. Basically. Because there are people out there who are not as good at what you do and not as disciplined, not as motivated, not as inspiring, and they're making more money than you, honey. So, I mean, let that be the real motivation to get out there and start doing some things. Like, for real.
I've gone to places where like, I feel like a lot of us go through phases where like, I am secure in this. And one of the things is like, I just started teaching again, and I haven't taught in years. That's one of the things I liked about moving into a new gym. It is a more competitive aspect, but it allows me to teach, and it fits in my schedule so much better. And the other good thing is like, I was able to leave my last gym with literally no issue. We have like we do like symposiums here where we float from gym to gym, and it's literally all the gyms I've ever trained at are in the network together. So it's like my old coach was like rocking one of the rash guards from my gym that's now. So like I know I'm really lucky that transaction was able to happen as smoothly as it did. But now I'm teaching the women's program. I'm over the women's program, and we have these teen girls who I'm just looking at them like, if I could have you focus for like 15 minutes continuously, and if you just listened a little bit, oh my God, you could be so great. And I'm just sitting here thinking, it was like, why don't I think this to myself? Because in my brain I was like, Torrie, if you could just focus, if you could just drill these passes for 15 minutes a day, you could be great. I was like, but I want to sleep. So, but like I found like part of some level of like an imposter syndrome has come back, but it's kind of they're actively going back and forth now that I'm charged with teaching people this sport. And I'm realizing it on the one hand, it's like, oh God, am I qualified to teach these people? I got basic jiu-jitsu. I do basic bitch shit, and I have no apologies about it. But on the other hand, it's like, well, let's not lie, you've been doing some shortcuts on some of these moves. Now we're relearning the proper way to do them. And now that I'm doing all the techniques step for step, I'm seeing when I'm rolling with guys who are, I mean, because nobody's my size, people who are closer to my size, but like they got that strength that I don't have. I'm seeing it's working better. So it's like, I don't feel like I'm qualified all the time to teach y'all, but because I have to teach you, I'm actually watching and studying. Like, I'm actually looking at jujitsu more than I ever had, because I don't care what anyone says. I can't watch a lot of jujitsu. It's my eyes go dead
all day, every day. It could be on and I'd be happy.
Are you? I came
running in the background. It running in the background in some form or fashion. Yeah.
Oh my God. See, that's why, again, that's another way I feel like an imposter. I don't like to watch a lot of jujitsu.
Yeah, but it's not because it's not because I want to, because kudos, I will say this, kudos to y'all for teaching, because the first time I ever got asked to teach a class, I was like, what? No. And they're like, wasn't that what you do? It's what you do for work. It's literally my job. Like what I get paid to do. I'm not a teacher. I'm a facilitator. That's different. And it's a facilitator for, like something else that I'm super confident in. Now you're asking me to share this knowledge. Guys, I don't know if I can do that. And they're just like, no. It's going to be just some women, and okay. I was like, okay, and it's that, kudos to y'all for doing that, because that is a whole other level of, you can be amazing at
be a shit teacher,
but a shit teacher, and that could happen. So I play it in the background just because I feel like osmosis is real.
Yes.
Wait, because if that's true, I was listening to a true crime podcast in the background. I don't want osmosis to be true. I'm not trying to die.
Listen, you might be trying to pick up some skills or something, but there's I think it is, especially just honestly. So terminology, the vocabulary. I mean, really and truly, I feel like I still to this day say that was the hardest hurdle in the beginning, was understanding this whole new set vocabulary of things that wait, you what? And then they're named after people that I have no idea who the fuck these people are.
I don't know any of the names to anything.
So light bulb, I just realized at Late Purple that De La Riva was named after something.
No, that's okay, because he's not that great of a human, so don't feel
bad. So
you're fine.
Like, inside person, outside.
I have never remembered a Japanese name for anything. Let me just say that right now. I have tried, and then like there's like the only one I remember is like, I know what an Uchimata is, like, but also it's just
no. The only ones I know are because of Sway, and because it was one of those, your knees jacked up, let me show you this Tani Otoshi, and
no clue what that judo.
I was gonna say, I think you do know the names, because you've said multiple times like, that's a blah 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 blah. I'm like, but
it's only because it's Sway. I swear, it's literally because she said something and said, hey, have you tried this? And I'm like, from far away, mind you, from miles away, and I'm like, let me go Google what that is first, and then see, I probably could swing that. Let me see. And then I have to go look up the history. I'm one of those nerdy, like in that sense of nerdy people, that I want to see the history and the background and where it came from. And I will never do judo. I'm gonna say it right now.
Oh God, no.
Tap wrestling was plenty for me. So I will never do judo, but I appreciate those that do, and her being being one of them. And when she's like, give this a go, or take a look at this and modify, or something like that. Yeah, no, I could spit them now because I know them now and I understand. But yeah, first time somebody said Uchimata, I was like, what?
That's the biggest point of imposter syndrome right now, is actually teaching. And I don't know if that's because I'm a black belt now, which is funny because I was a public school teacher for 14 years, right? Mm-hmm. So I was an English teacher and a theater teacher. I could communicate that stuff. But especially now as a black belt, I think that is my biggest point of insecurity or imposter syndrome, is that I know that I have all this knowledge up there. And I know that like and this is going to sound like, this is not meant to sound cocky. There are not many people on this earth who watch more jujitsu than me. And I can confidently say that. Like right now, I have a match playing in the background on my phone. Like
you've done commentary for jiu-jitsu
yeah,
before.
like I love it. I live it. I breathe it. Like that is literally what I think about when I wake up, and that is the last thing. That's like the last thing I think about before I go to sleep. I love jujitsu, and I know that, and it is obsessive, and I know that that might not be. And so I've got all this knowledge up in my brain, but then I'm so worried, and part of this is my gender. I know it. The first time somebody was like, "Oh, professor," I was like, "Oh, they're talking to me. That's weird." But then I'm also like, well, I wonder if maybe like I teach classes, right? And I don't teach, we're adding a women's class, but the class I teach is mixed genders. And I mentioned to somebody that I teach a class or that I teach, and he goes, "Oh, that's cool. You teach the women's class?" And I said, "No, I teach everybody. It's an essentials class." And he goes, "That's so nice that your professor lets you do that." The response, girl, I read him for filth, but that's besides the point.
I'm sorry, you mean it's great that I do my job at my gym?
And now
my gym that I own
is like, hey, I was like, hey, that's my name up there on the building, by the way. It says Torres. I don't know if you know that, but no, it's weird. And I sometimes think like, oh man, I wonder if men ever think like, yeah, that's cute, but she doesn't really know what she's talking about or things like that. And the reality is, I know that I do. I know that I'm one of the most knowledgeable people in that gym because I love this and I'm obsessed with it. But I do worry sometimes like, oh, maybe people don't think I know what I'm talking about. Because in competition, yeah, I'm a good competitor. I know what I'm doing, but you're right. Competition's not. And there are people who compete well that do not teach well. So that's been my biggest thing of like personal development is like, I'm watching more because I want to learn what works for people. And I've been like looking at, my husband's been watching like the AOJ app. And actually, I'm going to argue that they're some of probably the greatest teachers ever. I really do genuinely believe that. And I think Andre is a great teacher as well. I think Angelica's a great teacher, but I'm just trying to learn from people who also love what they're doing, who communicate it well, because that's my biggest point of imposter syndrome and insecurity at the moment, I guess.
Well,
and I can appreciate from the receiving side, I can appreciate when I am watching the matches and there is a knowledgeable and even bonus that it's a sister to me, but I can appreciate when it's a knowledgeable person and knowledgeable enough and knowledgeable to the extent of the technical term, the technical process of it, but you can also break down for the Connect Four people, right? They say chess, I'm Connect Four. Like for the people like me that are like, I need that broken down a little bit more in simpler detail, and that is it's a proud moment for me because I'm like, I know her, but it's also a moment of potential for me that I'm like, I have that to aspire to. So kudos, kudos, and thank
aspirational. But you know what? And that's one of the reasons why, like, I almost didn't like. It's weird because I always knew I wanted to do some aspect of teaching within there, whether it was just doing like private lessons or it was teaching. And when it was brought to me, it's weird because, like, on the one hand, I don't want to be insulted that I was asked just to teach a women's program. Like, I couldn't just teach. But on the other hand, it's like I've been in this game long enough that I've seen that women are more skittish to join jiu-jitsu. Some of them like came straight out of the gate, like straight out of the gates of hell, ready to
rip me out the
everyone.
Acting brand new.
Yes, they
use violence.
Yeah, there are ones who literally came in, and sometimes the little kids are like they're basically serial killers. Like they're little tyrants. But a lot of people who do come into the sport, like the women that come into the sport, they're like, I guess I'm gonna try it. Or I'm aware
they need that platform. Some do. They need that platform of a women's class, or even before the women's class, before it's officially, this is a women's jiu-jitsu class, the platform of self-defense.
Yeah.
With fundamentals mixed in. And that is one of those that when that happens, I think that I didn't realize, because I wasn't that person, I didn't realize that there are women out there that need that until they come to you and say, I can't tell you how much I appreciate the fact that y'all do this because I'm scared to start jiu-jitsu. My husband trains, my kids train, but I don't think I can make it through a class because we don't have women's classes. Everybody trains together, you know, and so that is that they use that self-defense class to kind of, and then they'll ask questions. Well, I saw this and this and this, and you know, what is that? Oh, that's a mount, and that's an armbar. Let me show you. Like, let me show you. So that they need that little almost. It's not a safety net. It's not a safety net. I don't want to say it, it's that stepping stone.
Yeah,
I think it's like a launching pad.
Yeah,
it's like they need a starting ground. So like again, that's something that like again that's part of my that's how the imposter syndrome kind of came back with me. Is like, are you saying I'm only qualified to teach new women how to do this? And I did that because I started teaching and I started teaching as like blue belt, but then I realized it's like, okay, maybe we need to take it as a way as Torrie, you're dope. You have a dope personality. Maybe it's a people feel more comfortable with you. Oh, she'll pop back up. Maybe it is a people feel more comfortable with you than they would with the other person that is coming into the
and I don't actually think that's a bad thing. I think it's only bad if people assume that women can only teach women's classes. I feel the same way as you about that. I'm very passionate about that because actually I find it more rewarding to teach women. And maybe that's because I come from the background of being like a sexual assault survivor myself. And I know there's a lot of women in there that are like, to me, it is a great responsibility that I feel very honored to like share and to be a part of. So no, I don't think it's more difficult to teach women. I think that women, there's something very primal in us. I think that women need this more than we realize we need it. And I think that it's an honor to teach women's classes as well.
I think another thing is when I did start working when I started working with domestic violence and sexual assault survivors, I think that kind of shifted my mentality as well, because it was like, it's not just, oh, you're only qualified to do this. It's like, actually, there are only certain people who are qualified to teach these women. Yeah. Because certain people, like I've been into classes. Even when I was a blue belt, like I've been into classes where like we had at my old gym, we had curtains, like because we had the door, we had like a curtain to stop people from coming in, and for parents from like peeking in there. But I remember like the curtain like being up, and on one side it was a gym. It was like the weights and everything, and like a woman being absolutely terrified because there were men in the side of the gym, and she didn't know men were going to be there, and she was in like tight clothing. And then I was like, okay, y'all got to go. And then I was like, I'm sorry, we'll make sure that doesn't happen again. This is definitely supposed to be during this time, it's a women only space. So that helped shift. And then it also helped that like I realized that at both of my gyms, I've really felt like when I came to this new gym, I really felt that I was, from day one, they were like, fuck, you're good. And then it's like, okay, we want you to teach the women's program. It's like, okay, are you available to teach anything else? And it was also you're quality at what you do. And we recognize that. And we think you can be a great benefit in different ways, not just, I think it's this idea of, it's weird because like at one end, I feel like sometimes I'm not qualified, but the other end is like, how dare you pigeonhole me into one area? I want variety, but I don't want you to tell me that I'm qualified for this variety. I want it to like, it's like a buffet. Just put it out there. Let me take what I want.
That's the battle. And you know, and doesn't it feel a little, not that we necessarily seek the validation, but
we do. Let's not lie. We do.
But it feels good. I mean, like Maggie mentioned earlier, and then you just mentioned it with the classes. I can remember sitting on the sidelines and watching a couple of my teammates, newer teammates, getting ready for a tournament, and another guy that was a belt below, they turned to him. I'm literally like kind of softly coaching. I hate doing that sideline stuff, but I'll joke and I play around and I'll be like, smash him. Yeah, there you go. You got it right.
I'm a very aggressive coach. Like I have to stop. I'm very aggressive.
But we were with after class, the kind of thing. They were just rolling, and I was just like, yeah. And the guy on bottom's like getting smashed, and I'm like, you got him right where you want him. And he's looking at me like, really? But that idea of when I actually started giving, like, hey, take your hand, move this way, da da da, and then they don't listen, and I was like, okay, or not. Yeah. And then he pops up and he looks at the guy right next to me and says, hey, so what could I have done to do X, Y, Z? And my teammate, shout out, because all of them are like that. That now that they'll turn and they'll be like, you realize she's she said exactly what you needed to
You
do.
could have done
Like,
what she asked you to do. Like,
You had the
yeah,
information, you chose not to use it.
yeah, and he's like, and you know what? What's even crazy? He goes, "Oh, I didn't know that that's what you were saying." He was like, "You know what's even crazier? Is he's like a world champion, so you might want to listen."
Yeah.
And I'm looking at him like, "Don't do that." And he's like,
My
"No, they
help.
need to recognize, like, they need to realize there is knowledge not just amongst us guys. There's
Yep.
knowledge with you ladies as well." And guess what? He was like, "And think of it this way: he goes, it will help him be able to roll better with the ladies." And I'm
yeah.
like, well, okay, yeah, okay. I was
When
like,
we
okay. Like,
we had a thing for the women's class, like the new women's class, and we have a couple people who work on like the graphic design for this gym. Shout out to the Birdhouse. And I was, between the Mighty Dames and like the Affirm and Amplify and my own personal stuff, I get a lot of fucking notifications on my phone. It's constantly going. And I saw one that I was someone tagged me and something. I was like, okay, let me see what this is. And they had took a picture that I had where I was coaching at one of the tournaments. They had me at the angle, my glasses were looking. I was softly lit with like a pinkish shoe, had like Birdhouse women's class, and had like multiple time champion of this. I was like, oh shit. And like they didn't tell me they were gonna do this, but that's part of their thing they were doing. And like I was there like, y'all made like a
I'm
and then they're
dope
like,
and I do dope shit.
yeah, they're like, well, you are that bitch. So why are you thinking, of course we would do this? But like seeing that was a moment of like, oh my God, I be doing my stuff, don't I? People be noticing me doing my stuff. That's a nice feeling sometimes. So in between these moments of like crippling self-doubt, I have these moments of like, actually, I did a little thing there. I'm pretty cool. I kind of know what I'm doing here. And I think that in reality, the concept of like imposter syndrome, of feeling that we're like somehow we did not earn our position, I think that's going to be deeply entrenched into just like womanhood, being a minority. There's always going to be people who think that we just did not earn our place at the table, even though we know our history, that we have scraped, we have drugged, we have crawled to being in the position that we are today. And like no one knows your story like you know your story. So to me, it's still wild that knowing where I came from to where I am now, I still don't think that there's times I don't think that I'm worthy of where I'm at.
I feel like I had a shift. Maybe it was like the magical, mythical black belt got wrapped around my waist or something, but I had like a shift where I realized like I'm at a point in my life now, and maybe it's because I'm getting older too. So maybe that's a blessing, where I'm not going to ask anybody for a seat at the table anymore. I'm going to pull a chair up and I'm going to make some space.
Yes.
But that's kind
Maggie,
of.
can I ask this? Did it happen at motherhood? Because I feel like that part, a little bit of that is that I feel like, because for me the mindset changed. I was a mom at 18, so my mindset like immediately switched to, I gotta do this for somebody else.
I think
I wasn't trained about it, you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I think I can see that actually. I think it crept its way, and I think that started changing me. And then I think honestly, just like then I was at black belt, and I see all these other people, and I'm like, oh, I'm not really worried about what they're doing. Like, yeah. So I definitely think that's a big part of it. But I just got to a point where I was like, why do I care what they think about what I'm doing? I'm still doing what I'm doing, and it doesn't change it whether they think I'm legit or not, because I know that I am. And so I don't know.
There was a portion of me when I first, when I first moved to the Houston area, I was looking. I came from a mom and pop MMA gym, so I was not looking for a big name gym. But at the time, the affiliation that I got my blue belt under was a big Houston gym, and not the one I'm with now. And it was that, like, I went to go try out a class there, and I just didn't feel like I didn't think it was going to be beneficial to either one of us. And then there was the idea of it's going to take me 2 hours to get there. So that was out of the question.
Oh God.
So I was like, nah. So I didn't realize, because as advertised, my gym now is not necessarily advertised as a BCC gym, like a big branded gym. It's advertising school of jiu-jitsu. Simple, plain, and still the mom and pop feel. Yes, we are an affiliation of a bigger brand. But when I started, and I came in literally 2 weeks out from a blue belt competition, and I was like, and then spent a week and then found home. So whenever I signed on to it, I did have that idea of like, am I going to represent this brand, this BTT brand? Like, can I really? And then I started looking up. I'd never heard of Brazilian Top Team at the time. So then I started looking up Brazilian Top Team women and black belts and just, ooh. And I had to dig deeper in the Brazil roots, and I was like, oh, these people mean business.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't, I was only doing local competitions at that point,
Mm-hmm.
the Nagas and the grappling industries and grappling game, like stuff like that. I hadn't even done an IDJ. I wasn't even registered, I think, at the time. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a piece of the imposter syndrome too, was, am I going to represent this big name and my gym? Am I going to do them justice? And I quickly realized, they're just happy for you to say, hey, you know what, I want to go compete. Hey, I want to go challenge myself, and to have a professor and a coach that are like, you got this, you're good. Like, work's done, you're good. Go have fun. Truly go have fun. I love the coaches too. Don't get me wrong. I respect the like do this, next, kind of coach.
Yeah.
I need that too sometimes. But I think we're, as athletes, as competitors, we have seasons.
You hear that, Torrie? As athletes.
All right. All right.
Yeah, we have seasons. And, when I started at Blue Belt, I did feel like I didn't earn it. But then I also felt like, you know what, let me get, that's how I signed up for the big idea. It was like, and then it was like right out the gate, Master World. Cool. Okay. Yep. Nope. Didn't do my best, I felt like, but came home still proud. And then it was, no, I got to do better. No, I got to do better because I'm not up to par with these other people, women at this level. Never mind the 10 or so that were in the division. I felt like I wasn't up to par. And I was like, nope. And it's that, again, imposter syndrome that kind of creeps in and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You had asked before we started, kind of going and stuff, but for sponsorship, the same thing. I was not the person that I was seeking out sponsors. I just so happened to find one that fit me perfectly in my gear, but it was that idea of like, am I really gonna represent this brand? Like, am I really? Because y'all see some of the shit I share on Instagram. I was like, am I really?
They knew who they were getting into bed with. They know exactly. They're like, that's it.
I was
boring athletes. Nobody wants boring athletes. I wouldn't want to sponsor you because of that. I mean, clearly some people want boring athletes, but not I.
So that's there's that idea too. It's like, am I really going to represent them? I'm a shit model. I forget to take pictures. I take pictures of everybody else's great moments, but my own. But then it's the, again, imposter syndrome on the business side, on the personal side, on the athlete side. And it creeps its way in, but then I feel like everybody needs that best friend or child or grown adult child that checks you real quick, whether it's your parent, a family member, best friend, whatever. The one that checks you and says, no, come back now.
Excuse me.
Like, hang on. Like, let me just tell you real quick. You are that bitch, and you are an amazing person. But also understand, Mom, that you are also someone who represents this brand. Like, that's that little check. Like,
Look, I don't feel like I'm qualified sometimes to represent the Mighty Dames, and I created the damn thing. So
that's a problem.
It's right. It's weird, but you've never thought like at your gym, it's like, am I really? But the thing
am I in charge of this shit?
That's honestly,
my name is on that building. I can't fake it now.
Honestly, it was like my intention for the group and what it became is so completely. I tell people this all the time. Like, this whole thing started because I was bored one day and I was playing with the design software. That's it. I made a logo up. I came up with a name and I was like, oh, this. And it just kind of snowballed into where we are now. Like I got a new logo from them.
That's imposter syndrome right there, though, because you're not admitting that the reality of it is you were frustrated with seeing the way that bigger people were talked about in this sport and the lack of representation. So again, you're not being totally honest about that. Yes, you might have created that design, but that came from here. That was intentional and purposeful.
Exactly.
And it's had a
this shit runs deep. That's but like on a serious note, like that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to this topic, and that's one of the reasons why like I don't share everything that goes in my life, but I do make it a point to be very transparent, knowing that I intentionally created the platform and knowing that there are other people who are similar to that. And whether it is weird to admit or not, people do follow the dames. They do look toward it for support, inspiration. People look to me for those things. People look to me for those things as well. So like even like recently I let everyone know that I was diagnosed as bipolar. And even that, I was like, even knowing now exactly what the things I was going for, before that I was just diagnosed with having depression and anxiety. I would still credit my success to me being a high achieving anxious person. I was like, well, it's because I have anxiety and I'm so fueled to like, things can't go wrong. So they have to go right. Not thinking as like, well, you made a conscious decision that this is what you wanted to focus your energy into, and you're just getting the fruits of your labor. So I think all of this stuff, it's like, there's a lot of surface level thing, but I think you mentioned, Alia, is like how you speak about yourself. The negative talk is so deeply ingrained that like, I have a full ass business, like merch and shit everywhere. And I still will say that I lucked my way into this, or I accidentally started this. Not that I spent countless nights on here. I've been on the phone. I've been messaging people. I've been creating websites. Sometimes it just doesn't feel earned, even though I know I have earned it.
Yeah. You have earned it and then some. Yep. You work. Yeah. You really. I equate that in the sense to you own a business. Maggie owns a business. That is y'all's baby, blood, sweat, tears. That is all of it.
So many tears.
So yeah, it is. It's negative self-talk that you gotta eliminate. You gotta eliminate that. Like it's hard. It's hard. And like I said, sometimes it takes an outside person, a third party, to check you. You know, like to really check you, because I don't catch it sometimes. I'll be like, no, I don't think I can. I'm not gonna really, I'm not credentialed in my field that I could, like my job. I'm not credentialed. I'm surrounded by Howard University graduates, people with doctorates and masters, and I didn't even finish my associate's degree. And I felt it was a little like, ooh, I don't belong here. Mm-hmm. And then it took, hey, they saw you, they hired you, and they pay you what they pay you because you are damn good at your job. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, you know what? Yeah, that's right. And it took an outside person to be like, you absolutely belong there. You absolutely belong there. So yeah, it's that self-talk. It is self-talk, and it's a task. It's a job. It's just as hard sometimes as training. Sitting down, taking 10 minutes out of your day, 5 minutes out of your day to write down, like things that you said to yourself that, man, this is still on my heart. This is still on my mind. And then coming up with a positive way to do it. Because I grew up in a world of, you could do this, but that's still not good enough necessarily. Like that. Yeah. That's
the trick is just to keep showing, like, even if it's like difficult, just keep showing up until you believe it.
Mm-hmm. Just right.
Doing the work.
Fake it till you make it. Okay, well, we've gone on for like an hour and 30 minutes, but this has been fantastic. Thank you, ladies, so much. Again, like we said, this is going to be Dame Discuss. This is going to be a monthly thing. We're definitely going to have it. We're going to be up on YouTube and on our podcast home. Thank you, ladies. This has been a blast.
You're welcome.